Good evening. I'm going to call the meeting of the North Beach Planning Commission to order Thursday, February 27th at 2025. There is a current quorum at this moment. The chairman of the board is out sick tonight. So until the co-chair, Mr. Heiner, attends the meeting, I will start the meeting. The first thing on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the January 23rd, 2025 meeting. If the members that are present have reviewed, and if anyone would like to make a motion, please do so, or we could push the minutes adoption until the next meeting. Steve or Jennifer?
Yes.
Where is there she is.
Second, I got kicked out and had to go back in. There was
Okay.
one correction
Okay.
application. Just have to pull it back up because it's not showing up. It's not.
I'll have to
I'm
pull
going to
them up too.
apologize because I have not used Zoom in forever. And I can't get to the meeting minutes now.
Okay, well, we'll move. I'll pull them back up and then we'll circle back around at the later part of the meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay,
And before we move on to our first item of tonight, I want to introduce Carol Spriggs. He is our newest member on the board, and this is his first meeting. And Carol, I promise you, next month we'll probably be in person. So Carol Spriggs, everybody.
Welcome.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you all. Glad to be here.
Okay, Rick.
Glad to have you.
Yes, we are certainly glad to have you. Okay, Rick, you can take it away.
Okay, so the main focus for this evening, after our last several meetings with variance requests and over the past year and a half, where we've discussed the fact that anytime somebody with a 25-foot wide lot or 37.5-foot wide lot comes in, it's basically been for a variance request for side setbacks, and the discussion had been made around changing from a standard 8-foot setback for everything and making people go to a variance to try to make the variances for the different lot sizes we have a little more uniformed. And so I did a couple of rewrites. I made some of the edits and additions to the ordinance with some additional changes that I thought should be made, recommendations. And so that's what we're trying to do tonight, is just go through this. My suggestion would be page by page and see if we can come to some finality on the changes we want to make, so that the Planning Commission can make a recommendation to the council for an ordinance amendment.
Rick, do you want me to share my screen?
Yeah, you can do that, because I don't think that iPad's gonna let me do it.
Okay, give me 1 second to pull up my document. Here comes Bill. He's logging in now.
Oh, good.
Now I just got to figure out how to share my screen. Okay. Can you see it?
Yep.
Okay.
And Bill in.
Yes, he is in.
Does he want to
Can
do
you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Bill.
Oh, okay, great.
So Jerome's not with us tonight, so, because he's not feeling well, so I started the meeting, so I'll turn it over to you now. We just pulled up Article 5. I shared my screen so we could start the review of what, the changes Rick sent over. Proposed changes.
Did we go over the minutes for last meeting and approve them?
Well, the minutes, Jennifer has a change to them and, she wasn't able to bring them up to remember what the change is, so we're gonna do that last.
Okay,
Bill, if you want, I think maybe what is probably easiest, maybe we'll just go paragraph by paragraph. I know that, that there were, Steve had some edits that he has suggested as well, so maybe if we just go paragraph by paragraph, discuss what, edits he has and what edits I have, and then, get a consensus from the group. I think maybe we can go through it and hopefully go through the whole, Article 5 this evening and be done with it. Would be nice.
that sounds that sounds like the way to proceed. I don't know what it got to go through it one way or the other. So
Hey, would it be easier if we pulled up my comments and shared that? I can share that if you'd like.
Okay, that's fine. Let me, go back in here so that you can share.
You've got to give me sharing privileges though, I think.
Right, yeah, let me unshare real quick and then I can. There we go, then I can fix it. Share. Okay, you should be able to share.
Sure, that's the right one. That's not it.
Yep. That's what you sent me.
Who was?
Yep.
That's what got emailed to all of us.
Yeah, do you have it? Can you see it?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right, so the first paragraph, I don't think there's any changes.
Correct.
The second paragraph where it starts lot size and building requirements. I don't know if we have to add the additions to existing structures, because even additions are new construction. It would all fall under new construction. I don't know what everybody else thinks, but I think new construction covers new brand new single family homes, or construction that's adding an addition onto a home is still new construction.
Well, it can't hurt to add additions to clarify.
Yeah, that might make it easier for members of the public who are reading this to see what they can and cannot do.
Okay.
I like the additions.
I'm gonna make the changes on here as you go along. Okay.
All right, and then it looks like you would like to remove the zoning administrator as the approval for that specific structure change and add the planning commission instead.
I don't know, is that appropriate?
I don't know, it's always been the zoning administrator, but it can easily become part of the planning commission. Either way, that specific variance to a setback doesn't go to the Board of Appeals, so whether it's done from my office or done at site plan with the planning commission doesn't make any difference to me. Whatever the group thinks is easiest is fine with me. Because it's very specific, so it's only for an addition on a house that's already over the required setback.
Right.
So as long as the new addition doesn't extend past the current the current house that it is now, a variance is not required. It can be approved right now from my office before it comes to you for review. But we can always, I mean, making it part of just the site plan approval and switching from zoning administrator to planning commission is fine by me.
Well, in the past, we never really saw a need to have it go through the whole process. Mostly because a lot of it was just if they were doing additions to existing structures that didn't conform to the current zoning.
Right,
For example, if I wanted to put an addition off the back of my house on the one side, it may not meet the 8 feet because the house has been here for 110 years.
but as long as it didn't go farther than what's currently there, it would just be.
Right. As long as it stayed even with the existing structure, there wasn't really an
Right.
issue or a need to take it. Only if it, if I decided to go further towards the side lot line, in which case then it would kick in the variance procedure.
Right. So I don't think it, I mean, I don't have any issues with changing it from being approved before I present to the planning commission or having it approved at planning commission site plan approval. It's fine either way for me.
I'd like to keep it as is, only because I think it gives you some latitude on these smaller work items.
Yeah, like I said, whatever you all decide is fine. I'm good.
I'm okay with leaving it as is.
Okay. So the next one, and it was just a suggestion, it was just one that I brought up for a question. The minimum lot area for multifamily currently is listed as 2,500 square feet. My suggestion was to make it the same as for any other lot that we have for residential use, which was 3,500. Now, that would not negate somebody who currently has a 2,500 square foot lot in a commercial zone from applying for permission to build a multifamily unit, but it would at least prevent anyone from separating or replatting lots smaller to do multifamily.
I think that's a great idea.
I agree with that.
I like it.
Same here.
All right, so Stace, we're gonna go ahead and change the minimum lot area unit for multifamily to 3,500, the same as the rest. And then I think, Steve, we can add the minimum lot width for multifamily by just adding it to that same line where it says minimum lot width, single family dwelling, and just doing a hash mark multifamily as well, without having a whole nother box.
Okay,
Is everybody good with that?
Yes.
Good to hear.
So I didn't understand where you meant, Steve, where you said the lot widths conflict with what I had listed below.
Yeah, it doesn't conflict. Never mind. Disregard that.
Okay. And we had discussed before trying to do very specific, but I went ahead and just made that middle one anything over 25 feet and anything under 50 feet. As opposed to, I think before we were doing like 20, you know, anything from 26 feet to 37 and a half. And then from, I think it's just easier to do just the three specific sizes and go with the, what we had initially talked about was the 8 foot, 5 foot, and then the 3 foot.
I think that's a good grouping.
I think if you look over the long haul on these, at least at least my recall is that's kind of where we've ended up, and I think that's why you were we were looking to get these. You were looking to get these in these categories. That pretty close to what we've ended up working through all.
Yeah, I went back over the last 10 years that I've been here.
Yep.
Pretty much everything above 25 and below 50 was a 5 foot setback in general. There were some outliers, but overall it was that 5 foot. And then the 25 foot wide lots ranged from 2 to 2.5, some 3. But I think after we've had discussion on the last 4 or 5 that have gone to the Board of Appeals, everyone was in agreement that 3 foot with the 19 foot wide house was sufficient, and it was going to make things a little easier for overhangs.
Yep.
You know, stormwater and that kind of thing. So
And the guttering, all that.
yeah.
Yep.
Access. Yeah.
Now, and since we still have the appeals and all those kind of things, if we've got one where it's one existing on a lot and the other skewed, there's still adjudication for that. So I like the way you've got it set up here.
Yeah, and I think moving it into this will give the Board of Appeals the ability to be a little more exacting and stringent in special exceptions for variances. So if someone is, got a 37.5 foot lot and for whatever reason there's an encumbrance that they cannot get around on one side and they have to go to 4 feet on one side, at least there's an option still. But this
Right.
the Board of Appeals can really enforce what our zoning is, which is there's supposed to be a special reason why you can't abide by, what was written.
Right. Good.
Before we move off of that, what's the rationale for having the minimum building height being 40 feet in the R1 and 2?
I thought that looked like maximum building height, didn't it?
Yeah,
Well, it used to be 30.
I can tell you, hold on. Well, I can look up when that changed if you like.
And I only bring it up because that one project on 6th Street, where we had that row of single family houses and the person came in with a 25-foot lot and a 4-story house that went to 40 feet. And it was so far out of scale with everything else except what's down on the waterfront that it made me start thinking, why 40 feet? Because most of the houses in town in the residential area, other than some of the newer construction, are single story or 2-story with an attic, and that's it. That seems to be the basic kind of style for the town. So do we want to keep it that high where everybody keeps building higher and higher?
I'm looking it up now. So actually, we reduced the height in R2 from 45 to 40 in 2016. It was prior to that, it was taller, it was 45 feet. And into this, the farthest I can go back on the historic ones we have online was 2011, it was 40 feet still.
Okay, I'm trying to find it in my old ancient one.
Yeah, 2011, it was still 40, R2 was 45. So the only real change was we reduced the R2 from 45 to 40 in 2016.
Okay, I'll need to do some research then with all of my papers, like literal papers, not online stuff.
Yeah, so whatever you have, go back past 2011.
Okay,
So I've got all of the updates from, there was updates in 2011, 12, 14, 16, 17, 18, 19, 21, 22, and 23.
okay, so what was the earliest one, 2011?
Yeah. So it would, if it was smaller than 40, it was prior to 2011.
It may have been the Conservation Height Overlay District. Hang on a second, for section 3. Yeah, I'll have to dig into it because I'm not really seeing it here. And this is the older one. It was
Yeah.
35 for the conservation height. And that actually was down on the waterfront at that point. So I'll go back and look.
Yeah, 2011, the zoning districts were R1, R2, R3, C1, C2, and W.
Mm-hmm.
And R1 was 40 feet, R2 was 45, R3 was 40, C1 was 40, C2 was 50, and W was 50.
Okay.
I've got some older paper copies upstairs that we have in some files. I can try and pull those as well sometime next week. But
Okay.
it was definitely prior to 2011.
Well, I have 1988 here, and that's the one that's mentioning the conservation height overlay. But I do remember discussions about they could have been 35 for the back part of town,
Right.
west of Chesapeake, just because, you know, we
I
don't.
mean, I wouldn't take the 40 feet out, but you may look at or want to regulate slowing the heights down by maybe limiting someone from building a 40-foot house next to a single story, may limit it to 2 additional stories above whatever is next to you, so that as the town grows, the heights grow a little more stagnated as opposed to all at once. I don't know if that's something that can be put into the zoning.
Well, if we stick to design standards and make it so that we have to do design standards instead of whenever we feel like doing design standards, that would get addressed there. because of the roofing height thing. So maybe change that section about the commission may refer to design standards to the commission shall refer to design standards.
Yeah, I'm trying to pull that up now.
That would have fixed Fifth Street too. Where everybody was complaining about that one house.
Yeah, I mean, it may have helped there, but there were 3 other houses within adjoining lots that were the same height as the one built. The anomaly was only the one Rambler house. House across the street is 50. The house on the house on the opposite corner is 40. The house on the opposite corner is 40.
Yeah, but that would have saved us on Sixth Street.
I'm trying to see. I've got the design standards up. I'm trying to see where it.
See if I have it marked.
Yeah, they're a little vague, and they really go into individual houses.
Oh, it's on page 22 in the design standards. At least it's page 22 of the one that I have. Under the pictures, there's priorities for continuing revitalization, and there's a bunch of bullet points.
Yep.
It's the 3rd one from the bottom. It says control residential building heights so that historic cottages are not overshadowed.
Yeah, it's really kind of vague. I mean, if you allow 40 feet, it's.
Well, that's kind of why, between that and that one instance it's just so much of a difference.
So I think maybe that's where we address it at is once we get the ordinance done and June or July, we finish with the comprehensive plan and get that off. Maybe we start working on whether areas that we can address the architectural guidelines and where it gives us that direction to control residential building heights. It doesn't really tell you how. Like it should say control residential building heights so that historic cottages are not overshadowed by, limiting the height of a house, limiting, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, if you have a Rambler, you can't build a 4-story next to the Rambler. You can build a 3-story. So it would still be some difference, but it won't be as drastic.
Yeah, personally, I'd only go 1 story higher. But that's just me because I would prefer a gradual progression.
I mean, it would be, but I think you also have to weigh how much it would limit actual progress within the town. You don't want to, I don't know if it would prevent people from buying and renovating homes. The property values here are pretty high now. Most
Mhm.
people that are buying some of these cottages that are really hard to renovate for the money, the only way they get their money back is by going up and adding on. So I think you got to weigh both sides of it. But even if you limited it to just two, would still be a drastic improvement over a 4-story next to a single story.
Well, we might have to agree to disagree there.
No, and I only say that because there's so many of the 40-foot ones now.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be hard to say that they don't fit with the street line that's currently there.
Well,
What's
that's why I'm bringing it up now,
Yeah,
rather than, go full tilt into adding 40 feet and 40 feet everywhere. Because part of it is that the higher up we go in the middle of blocks and things, we're losing our historical character. And that's a piece of it as well.
what's the date on that design standard?
So-
Uh,
hers is different than mine because it's page 22, but my bullet point for that line is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 down. Or did you say third from the bottom?
third from the bottom, yeah, this is 2012.
Yep, same one.
So it definitely needs to be worked on. That's 13 years old. There've been a lot of changes. But
But I think addressing the building height. I mean, personally, I don't think it's beneficial to reduce the height from 40 feet. I think if you want to address the slower rate, I think it's better done through the design standards where it tells you to do it, but it doesn't really give you an idea of how to do it.
that only works if
Well,
the design standards
part
are.
of the problem, Jen, is that it because they were so vague, it didn't really give you any direction. It just said you should do it. Didn't tell you how. It didn't say control the height by doing A, B, C, and D. It just said just control the height. And so normally what would take place is your design standards controlling the height would be, we're at 40 feet. You've been at 40 feet for probably 15 years or more. I don't know if you want to go back from that now. I mean, you can. I'm not sure if that's the direction to do it, or to make the architectural guidelines less vague and with a little more instruction as to how to address those issues.
Well, we could do that, but we also, the key thing is that at some point, the planning commission's adherence to the design standards were made optional. And
Well,
That's-
that's because we weren't, well, that's okay. Well, we have to update the design standards. Is the intent to get the design standards written in as code?
That's something else you can address, whether or not you want to make that a recommendation to the council that you want to.
And then what's the goal? Because I mean, I know there's historic structures, but we're talking about non-registered historic structures, i.e., a structure that's been here all. That's not like a Maryland registry house, right?
Yeah, we don't have any, I don't believe, in town at this point.
the Maryland Historic Trust did go through and identify structures in town that could be considered historic.
And if I recall, I don't think
There's
that
a
was too
list.
many. I don't think it was very many.
Um,
residential.
don't know. I could send you the link. I'd have to go look it up.
No, no,
Because I
that's
was here when they did that.
I think they have designated historical significance, but not historical registration.
Right. There is a difference. They went through and they did a historical survey to see which buildings in town could be considered to be added to a historic register
It would have to be applied for and
through the town. Yeah. Well,
submitted, yeah.
No.
there's a whole story to that. We
Wait a minute,
did
the
have
only-
a few.
Jennifer, the only historical house in town is Betty Jamieson's at First and Dayton.
Right.
The county does all of our historical preservation now. We no longer have our own committee.
Yeah.
So
There
they-
was
so they
that
can be
one
con-
house too on Chestnut.
Yes, but they withdrew it.
Right.
That's it.
But there is that survey, so there are houses that would be eligible should the owners seek to pursue that. I don't know how many people whose houses are on that list know that. But there is a list at Maryland Historic Trust of all those buildings, and I'll dig up the link and send it to everybody.
Well, so is the thought that you restrict that you make special code exceptions around each of those houses?
Say that again?
Well, if you're gonna designate the houses and you want the code to adjust to the historic structures, if they're, I guess, near historic, I guess, then we would have to put some kind of note in here that ties into that list and then put the restrictions on it.
Can you give me an example? Because I'm not sure, I want to make sure I understand exactly what you're saying.
Well, if you have if there's a one-story house next to a two-story house, somebody buys the two-story, wants to make it 3 or 4, but this house is on the list, but it's not on the registry. If we don't want the 3-story house to be built next to it, then we have to put some kind of restriction into the code tied to the list of properties.
I think that's what they tried to do in part of the design standards. And there's another bullet point on that same page. Because one of the things in there, and also in our comprehensive plan, was to try and maintain some of the historic parts. Let me see. North Beach, yeah, it's just like this, all these bullet points. The second one, North Beach should have a unique look based on the use of traditional historic building size and character. Care must be used in approving projects so that the residential quality is not lost. Control the building heights so that historic cottages are not overshadowed. Extend the landscaping of public areas, blah, blah. North Beach should be unique based on the use of traditional building size and character. So when this was done, one of the reasons that ended up in there was because the people that came here valued the fact that this was a beach town with beach cottages and not cottages like the Rhode Island oceanfront cottages that are McMansions, but traditional cottages in a small town. That's why that piece is in there and has stayed in there, because that was a big part of our identity. So do we want to lose that and fill us up with 4-story houses?
Well, I mean, we lost the bulk of the waterfront cottages during Isabel, so
I know.
they don't exist anymore. You got the old Lockers building and the one adjacent to it, because that was on the high ground. Everything else pretty much washed.
Right. But that's just one part of the town. There are a
Right,
lot
but
of,
part of that code was written, that design standard was written to try to have a stepped series of buildings coming off of the waterfront. Okay, so that's kind of gone now. So we need to
Right.
take a look at, if you want to do building heights, then you got to look through the rest of it, because the old design standards had 50-foot houses in them.
all right, I'll go back and dig out my old one because I don't have that one.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
not, it's obvious that the design standards and is gonna need to be updated. I mean, in these same set of bullet points, it talks about how, you know, there's an absolute need to build an outstanding town center
Mm-hmm.
between Fifth Street and Bay on Chesapeake Avenue. Well, that's obviously not the town center at this point. I mean, it's part of the center of town, but I mean, there's a lot has changed in the last 13 or 14 years. I think if you want to try and do the historic preservation on the few small cottages that are left, that's something you can look at. But overall, when we did the inventory in town, there are significantly more 3- and 4-story houses than there are single-story houses in town. I think trying to go back to the small beach cottage town is, as I don't know if that's an achievable goal at this point, as opposed to preserving maybe the ones that are left, if the property owners even want to do that. Like Stacy said, the few that we did have, those people chose to withdraw those designations so that they didn't and were not limited as to what they could do with their homes.
Yeah, which is not exactly how you do historic preservation stuff, but
Well, I mean, I don't know what the legalities are, but if someone already owns a house that hasn't been designated as historic, if you want to preserve it and make it historic, I don't know if you can force that on someone.
no, you can't force somebody to declare their house historic. It has to be a voluntary thing, but usually once it gets that designation, it's kind of stuck there. But that's a different thing. And I see what you're saying and I understand it. But I don't want to see us stuck with what happened on 6th Street again. And that was basically because of that one piece, that one thing in the zoning ordinance that got changed to make design standards may instead of shall. Because had we had the strength of design standards in looking at that, we could have said, no, you can only go up 3 stories.
Are you sure it's 6th Street?
Oh, yeah. It's a 25-foot lot between Dayton and Erie on 6th Street. It's not built yet, but the lot was for sale. And the owner came in with a plan to put a
Okay.
4-story
Talking
narrow
about-
house.
Yes, yes. I thought you were saying one had been built already. I was like, I don't.
Oh, no, no, no.
I know which one you're talking about. the 25-foot wide lot that had the house that had been torn down before.
Right,
Yeah,
and the
okay.
house beside it was like right on the lot line.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I don't want to be in that position again. That just, that whole side of the street is all single-story houses.
yeah,
And it's not like that was on the end. It was kind of sort of towards the middle.
yeah, it's in the middle. It's like 2 houses in.
Yeah, so that's not good. That it's so that's why I started to look at the 40 and think, no, I thought it was supposed to be 35 or 30. And I only paid attention to it because at one point we were thinking about um, going up another story on our house.
Yeah, I think I really think the best way to address it is to tighten the design standards where they give clearer direction as to how to achieve certain things. And then wherever that was in the zoning ordinance, we change the wording like you suggested, where it doesn't say, you may, you should, where it makes the planning commission have to at least look at the design standards as part of their basis for approval.
Okay.
Well, then I guess we're recommending the design standards get updated and then reviewed and then incorporated as requirements. Because there'll be a lot of interpretation once you start moving into architecture.
Well, I mean, I think you guys have a lot of interpretation individually anyway, so I don't know necessarily if that will change, but maybe if you guys come to some agreements as to more decisive rules within the guide standards. Like I said, it just says that you should do this, but it doesn't really give you any guidance as to what that might look like. It just says limit it, but it doesn't say how you should limit it. So right now, the only way you can limit it is through the zoning ordinance that has been 40 feet for at least 15 years. And in fact, you did, when this 2012 was written, you did limit those heights by reducing them in the R2 zone. You reduced them from 45 to 40. So I see where in 2012, where that fit what was taking place with the zoning ordinance, you did do something to reduce building heights. It was only 5 feet and it was only in one zone, but it did take place.
I think as we go through design standards, there will be things that jump out at us that we've looked at different projects, like windows on the sides of houses. If the house is on a side of a house is facing a street.
Right.
And that comes up a lot with us because we've had a lot of people come in with like maybe 1 or 2 little windows and it just looks like crap. So we've talked about that kind of a design thing. We look at roof pitches. So I think, maybe those pieces where we all seem to have common concerns at this point would be fairly easy for us to add into the design standards, a way to quantify how we'd like that to look and then add it in.
Excuse me. Yeah, I agree. Like I said, I think that's probably the way to do it. We finished this portion of the ordinance. June or July, we should have a completed comprehensive done for recommendations to the council. And then you then you can take on the task of looking at the 18-year-old design standards.
And we do mention the design standards in the comprehensive plan, so it's kind of a key piece.
Yeah. So are you good for now to leave this 40 feet in here?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
Personally, I would prefer we take it to 35, but I hear you. And I'm just one person, so.
Well, what does everybody else think? Do you think we can address it through a stronger worded design standard that maybe gives a little more direction as to how to address when someone wants to build a 40-foot house next to, you know, a 20-foot house or 18-foot house? Maybe the design standards say that, you know, it can't be more than, say, a 18-foot difference, or maybe you know, there's got to be a way that we can make it a little more specific as to how you address height differences between houses next to each other without it just being centered on, say, the historic value of a house.
So if the architectural design standards haven't been updated in 18 years, then it's probably time to do a review
Right.
with that in mind, as well as, you know, many other things after we do the review or during the review process.
Okay.
So I would be okay with that.
It's 13 years. I think the reason that I came up with, well, why don't we just lower the height, was because I kept hearing, well, they're allowed to build that high. They're allowed to build that high. And when I tried to bring up design standards, it was, oh, well, we don't have to go with those. So that's why I was concerned.
Yeah. Oh, I understand. And like I said, I think part of the problem was, even if it said you had to go with design standards, the design standards are so vague, it doesn't really give you any direction as to how to address the height. Just says you're supposed to, it just doesn't say how.
Well, if we're gonna take that on, then our design standards have to get updated, and then our permitting has to change. Because right now we do site permits. If we're gonna add in superstructure and architectural features, that's a slightly different permit. I thought the county did those.
Well, it wouldn't change our permitting process. You guys still approve what the house looks like. They just do the construction part of the permitting.
Well, it just adds another component to our review
Yeah.
to assure compliance with architectural standards, which up until, at least from my experience, has not been part of our purview.
No, we generally get one of the pages shows us the exterior view and the roof pitches and all of that.
Yeah.
So that I don't know why that piece would change, because we get that now. It's just that
Well, we get it. We just haven't had the
we haven't,
real ability to comment on it.
right, we haven't looked at it in reference to design standards.
Correct.
And that was something that we did do my first 2 terms. So, for what it's worth.
Okay, so I suggest we leave the 40. And with the concentration that once this is done, and immediately following the recommendation to the council for the comp review, that we start scheduling architectural design guidelines and standards review, with the emphasis that we're going to make them a little more stringent with a little more direction, and that they will become a part of the review process, mandatory part of the review process.
If we want that, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is that I'm asking. I'm not like you guys. This is on you guys. I'm just making the suggestion that that's the direction we do it, to try and get it done as orderly as and efficient
Agreed.
as we can.
Mhm.
Moving on.
All right. I think we get down to, yeah, the mixed use. I think you've got the D highlighted. I don't know.
Yeah.
Some sort
That's
of
a typo.
just a typo,
Yeah.
clerical error. 5103 open space. I just added the floor area ratio because I've been asked 8 or 9 times what it means. So I just figured we'd set for clarification. I didn't have anything. I think Steve has some stuff in 5104.
Just a street can be very long, so trying to take a majority into consideration of an entire street as opposed to a block is my only.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, because if you do the whole street, you could have the majority of them on one end, and the other end is completely different. And
Right.
so I think block fits the meaning of the paragraph better. I agree.
Okay.
I
And then
agree
I
with
just
that.
changed from may be reduced, not shall be reduced.
Yep, I'm good with that change as well. I think it better reflects what the purpose was.
So you added 5102 of this article is good.
Yep, side or rear yard setbacks.
Yep. In
Just so
B,
that reflects where adjusted at in that table.
in B2, non-residential, when non-residential use coincides with the side or rear lot of another non-residential use, the side or rear lot line may be reduced to 0, provided the following conditions are met. And I don't know how you reduce a building line to 0 and still provide emergency vehicle access and maintenance.
So we really don't have any issues as far as that. And actually, I think Mr. Spriggs can best respond to this. But I believe as long as the fire department has road front access, it's not much different than a row of townhouses where those buildings are butted up against each other. So in the commercial district, if 2 buildings were butted up against each other, they're going to have that middle where those buildings touch is going to have to be fire rated. And so long as that fire truck has front access, I believe it meets the standard. But like I said, Mr. Spriggs is
You're,
a fire
you're,
expert, so
yeah, you are
I'll
correct
let
on
him
that.
onto this.
Now, you're absolutely correct on that. As long as they can, typically they would like to access 2 sides, or front and or rear. But it doesn't have to be direct access to the rear. They could have a sort of indirect access to the rear, but as long as there's direct access to the front of those structures, then they would absolutely be fine.
And I believe that's why it says that the side or rear lot line may be reduced to 0, but not both.
So if an existing non-residential building,
Yeah, commercial up against commercial.
yeah. So there's an existing building, right? That just has a exterior CMU wall. And then the next lot over decides they're going to build with 0. So basically the 2 walls are touching. One is fire rated, maybe, because the code would require that because
Well, it depends. So it depends on when it was built, but current fire code for construction, anything anything closer, I believe it's 5 feet. So if you're within 5 feet of your property line, that wall has to be fire rated, and it doesn't make any difference. So like if say you built a house and you built it 4 feet from the property line, and the Chesapeake Bay was what was next to you, it wouldn't make any difference. That wall that's within 5 feet of that property line must be fire rated.
And it must be sprinklered if it's going to be new construction and falls under the code.
Well, I'm thinking of an existing building and somebody comes along and buys a lot next to it and wants to build. And that existing building is an old building. And it's neither sprinklered and it just has a simple, masonry wall, like church or something down there, which we have right there on 4th Street, I guess.
Yep.
That doesn't fall under the scenario that you just described in terms of having that fire separation.
No, it would still have it. Just the old building wouldn't have it, but the new building would still be required.
Correct.
Yeah, the new building would still be required to have that fire rating done on the part that's closest to the other building.
Okay.
For purposes of understanding, for example, the building that the Bacus currently occupies is an older building.
Yep.
Right next to it is the building that has had, unfortunately, North Beach Soap. If the building that had North Beach Soap is torn down and replaced by another building, and they build right to the lot line, what's
Yep.
that going to look like?
What, I don't understand. What do you mean? What's it going to look like?
Well, you would have that new building, if it went to zero lot line,
Mm-hmm.
and it was right up next to, and I don't know where the Bacus lot line is, but on that side. But
They're
it
about
seems to
5
me they're like really close together. You've got one new building that's built to fire code, but you don't have the Chesapeake's Bounty building, the Bacus building that's built to fire code, because that's an older building. So is there a negative impact there as far as fire safety?
There is not. The Bacus building was built to the code at the time that construction occurred. And we see this all across the country. So, and all across the state anyway, because we're in Maryland, but you're going to have that as buildings get replaced or as major changes are made to structures. So if you do more than, let's say, 45 or 50% renovation to a building, then you need to bring it up to the current code, which oftentimes requires you to change fire rating or firewall ratings and add residential and or commercial sprinklers depending on the occupancy type. So it's not uncommon to see that. It's just something that we're going to face from time to time.
But would that create a danger then for the occupants of that building, since they're fire safe under an older code?
So again, at the time that building was constructed, it absolutely met the fire code. So is that building less safe than a newer building? Absolutely. A home that was built 20 years ago that doesn't have residential sprinklers is less safe than a home that's built today that has residential sprinklers. We can't require existing structures to meet today's code. It's just not financially possible. It's not legal to make.
Right. I get that point, but what I'm asking is if that building was compliant when it was redone or whatever, so it's okay, we're not asking them to do anything, but then we've got somebody right next to them to build slam up against their property line. Is that going to cause an issue for the person in the older building right next to them? Is that going to compromise their safety?
No, ma'am.
I would say no.
No, ma'am.
The new building is much safer. it probably enhances their safety because the new building is gonna be built to the new and higher standard fire code. So they're less likely to have, they're probably in more danger now with the two old buildings next to each other than to build a new one 2 feet closer that's got a much higher standard of fire rating.
Okay, thank you. And may I say how nice it is to have somebody that's got that fire experience
I just said,
on our board?
yep, well, absolute welcome addition for sure. %100. So I think we are at C, structure exempt from maximum building height. I think my only comments here were we have an exemption from maximum building height, but we don't give any limits to it. So do we really want someone to put a cupola on top of their house that's 35 feet tall or 60-foot flagpole, or should we consider adding some restrictions to these?
So the restriction could easily be subject to architectural standards and addressing it in the architectural standard.
I think that would work just fine.
Yes.
Yep, sounds good.
So I don't know where we make the note so that we remember that that's one of the things that we need to clearly address when we get to the design standards. And the only reason this came up was someone was actually looking to, they didn't buy the property, but they wanted to build like an old style house. What was the old movie with they wanted that windows type thing with the cupola on top. They asked how tall it could be because the one they were looking at was 19 feet tall. And I was like,
Yeah, no.
I was like, I think you could do that. And she said, she goes, well, it says it's exempt from the building height restriction. I was like, oh, it is.
But it says ornamentation.
Yeah.
There's a difference between an area that you can occupy and turn into a room and
They didn't want it to turn
ornamentation.
into a room. They wanted it to look like that New England style with the widow's walk to be able to walk out and around it. And I was like,
Hey, Rick, I think we pushed that off by reminding them that they're at a 79-mile-per-hour wind load down here. And so if you were going to put a mast up on your structure like that, then we were going to look for some calculations for that.
yeah, I just figured we needed to put some sort of a limit on it. I think Steve's suggestion we do it through the design standards and make it something specific works.
Or since it's exempt, do you want that to come in for separate review?
That's
Like, rather than try to prescribe, you're going to say, okay, here's a series of, if you will, excess features, and if you want to put them on, you got to bring those in detail.
Yeah, you could do that, or you could do a percentage, exempt from maximum building height up to 20%, or I don't know. I don't know how you do it, honestly. And we really haven't had an issue, but I did have someone ask. And so I figured if we're going to address it, we might as well.
Yeah, I can only remember one time we had that roll in. I remember that issue too. So all I was saying is my take on it is because it talks about exempt. Okay, so you're exempt from it, but do we want to call it it has an additional review? In other words, you got to detail it out for us on your drawings.
It's up to you guys. I just remembered it. So I remembered them specifically asking. That's why I put, should we consider limits?
Well, if they have to detail it out on the drawings, I mean, that's fine, but where would we be able to say, no, that's not what we mean? Where would be our backup in the ordinance that says we can say, no, you can't do that?
I don't know. I think Steve's suggestion is probably the easiest way to address it, and then you can make it very specific.
In the architectural design standards, and as per this, it's subject to review and approval. So it would require some sort of design for review and approval to be
That
submitted.
works. That works.
I'm good.
Sounds good. So D, another
Whoop.
just clerical one.
Backing up to C1.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, the whole point of limiting the height of a building is the roof. So the roof structure cannot be exempt.
So it's just roof structures for the stairways. And most of those come in with, I don't know if we've had many, but so the stairway structure was part of what was going to be where that widow's walk was, what they were talking about. So it's not the full roof structure. It was listed as specifically roof structures for the housing of stairways. I don't know if we've ever had that really presented.
So if we just change that to stairway structures,
That's fine. I'm good with that too. That doesn't give anybody any ideas that it's something different.
Yeah, it's less confusing that way, I think.
okay. A little typo down here. And D.
Change. Yeah, I'm good with that. Okay, so A, there's no conflict here because it's the first part of it where it talks about uninhabitable accessory buildings. So that's like sheds, on-ground decks. They don't go by the same building restriction line as a inhabitable structure.
I understand, but the side setback is now 5 and 3. And so you're saying is that, okay, as long as the occupied portion, sorry.
It's a detached building.
I understand.
So that's good.
But you can now go, for a garage, you can make that closer to the property line than what the residence is.
Correct. That has always been that way. Yeah, detached uninhabitable structures have always had a 5-foot setback on the side and rear yard.
Okay. Can we delete the word required up there? They occupy side and rear yards, not required side and rear yards.
Yeah, I don't know. Not sure where that word
What
came.
would have been required side and rear yard setbacks
Doesn't say
shall
that.
not be located closer than 5 feet.
Doesn't have the word setback. That's why I deleted required. It may occupy the side and rear yards, but shall not be located closer than 5 feet from any side or rear property line.
Yeah, either one.
Same thing.
Yeah,
Yep.
either take required out or put setback in. So either way, taking
Okay.
required out is probably the easier way. Does the same thing.
Okay. In B, I just wanted to use the same verbiage.
Setbacks instead of dimensions.
Yep. I'm sorry, Stace.
I'm talking and typing.
Oh, I'm sorry. I guess I should have asked if you were, if we were getting ahead of you.
No, I'm following Steve along on my other screen. He's typing too.
Okay, all right. It's just a typo in the first sentence there.
That should be what required.
Yeah.
All right, that A thing. Um. 8th Street between Bay and Chesapeake, that one house that has the real small side setbacks, and they have the bump outs on the second level that take up essentially the whole
Yes, I know what you're talking about.
setback. Do we want to keep allowing that? Because that came up as an issue when we were talking about fire access.
So I think that's where this A here, 5106A comes in.
Mm-hmm.
Or canopy awnings. So up 8 feet above grade.
Says may extend any 3 feet into any required yard, but not nearer than any lot line, which makes me think you can go right to the lot line, the way that's worded.
Right.
And I don't think that's a good idea. I think they need to be set back a little bit.
I think, yeah, I don't. May extend 3 feet. So I think the 3 feet's probably fine, but like you said, on the 25-foot wide lots, I think it should be limited to. We're doing a 3-foot setback, so probably no closer than 1 feet would be the only. I mean, you're not going to build a 19-foot wide house that has no overhang at all. There's going to be some eave, but it probably shouldn't be more than 12 inches.
Well, what's a typical eave is greater than 12 inches with the gutter on it? I mean, it's usually 12 plus the gutter, right?
Yeah.
So 2 feet, like you said.
Well, what are considered such similar features? Because that house had, I think there was a fireplace or something that they put in that bump out.
Yeah, the fireplace isn't going to bump out, but maybe 18 inches at the most.
Yeah. So the average overhang in the US right now is 1 to 3 feet. So I think if we leave it at 3 feet for everything other than the 25-foot and limit that to 1 feet, it'll still give us at least a 2-foot separation in between the houses at the worst, which is better than some of the ones we have on Annapolis Avenue, Atlantic Avenue now.
Yeah.
Well, part of what's confusing about A is you're sort of lumping in eaves with which are necessary part of the structure with canopies or awnings, which are essentially add-ons, like for a covered porch or, things like that. And, I know we've had problems before with eaves going all the way to the property line, which essentially says that whoever builds up to that 40-foot level and puts their eave out to the property line first pretty much prevents the other person from doing it on their side.
Well, like I said, I think if we put the 25-foot wide definition in here, it will restrict that. So it says you can't go
Mhm.
any more than 3 feet into any required side yard. So your 37.5-foot wide lots are not they can't go to the property line.
Right.
But wide lots can't. The only ones that could would be the 25-foot. And if we say they're limited now to 1 feet extension, then none of them will go to the property line.
My concern there is with an eave, I don't know that you can adequately construct the eaves to 1 foot, limit it to 1 foot, constructability wise.
You can make it 18 inches. That still prevents it. That would still prevent the.
Well, I would go
Going
so
all
far
the
as to
way-
say 2 feet and you're still 1 foot off the property line
Yeah.
for 25-foot wide lots.
Well, you'd be 6 inches on each side.
No, 1 foot on each side.
It'd be a 19-foot wide house, right? 3 and 3, 6, 2, 4. Yep. So you could do 2 feet. And then you wouldn't have to, you could take out the not nearer than any lot line because it wouldn't be possible for them to get to the lot line.
Yeah, that part definitely needs to come out because that sounds like you can go the whole way to the lot line.
Well, I think that was put in there because we have some of those 25-foot lots that have 21-foot wide houses, and then they've got the 2-foot eaves, so they were right at it.
And that's not a good thing. So we need to get rid of it. So if anybody else wants to build, then they're not going to repeat that stupid mistake.
Yeah, so I think we take out, but not nearer than any lot line.
Right.
And then put the definition, and then right after that, put 25-foot wide lots may not extend any farther than 2 feet into any required yard, or 18 inches. I think 18 inches is sufficient.
Well, for a 50-foot or 25 to 50-foot lot, you can extend 3 feet,
Right.
but not nearer than 1 foot to any lot line would disqualify the 3 foot on a 25-foot wide lot, depending on the width of the house.
Well, on the 25-foot wide house, the width of the house can only be 19 feet.
No, it could be 18.
I mean, they could do smaller, yeah.
That's my point.
I don't think you're going to have that problem. I mean, we haven't had anybody come in trying to build 8. They've all
No,
built larger.
Okay, so what's your
We-
language here?
Yeah.
Bill, how do we write it?
Extend.
Okay, so any required yard
So
in
you're-
the R1 and R2 districts, except for 25-foot wide lots, may not extend farther than 2 feet into any required yard. Is that right? Does that do it?
Say that again.
So at the end where it says may extend 3 feet into any required yard in any R1 and R2 districts, comma, except for 25-foot wide lots, which may not extend any farther than 2 feet.
That's it.
So we can.
You might want to take out that 0.
Where's that?
You have not nearer than 1 foot -0.
That's 1 foot, 1 foot 0 inches.
Oh, okay.
and tweak that however you'd like. If you,
Well, if you're saying 2 feet and spelling it out, I'd be consistent in the verbiage. But that's just the English nerd coming out, sorry.
but not greater than 1 foot 2 in the lot line. How's that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Was that just for side yards or is that rear too?
Well, yeah, no, the rear, you're good because you have the 20-foot. You've got a 20-foot setback in the rear, so
Okay.
So let me ask you a question, Rick. If somebody had a rear deck, let's say that extended 8 foot off of the back of their house towards the rear, they couldn't put a roof on that? An awning or canopy? Because it's greater than 3 feet?
sure. Like I said, because you got a 20-foot setback in the rear, so I mean, you'd have to build a massive deck your deck would have to be on most of these lots would have to be 20-foot deep you'd have to go 20 feet out before you even come close.
But we're sort of limiting the extensions of a canopy or awning. I guess I don't think we need to be that persnickety. You know, some people get these retractable awnings and canopies that come out, 10, 12 feet.
Yeah, but like I said, in the rear, you're not even coming close to the rear yard lot line. So it's
But
not,
we don't specify side. We just say into the yard. So that could be front, rear, or side.
yeah. Yeah, we're not specifying, but like I said, so in the rear, you've got a ton of room. In the front, there's 15 feet.
We might
Correct.
want to put side in there just to make it really, really clear that that's what we're talking about.
I mean, it fits the front and the rears as well.
But we have a front yard in B. So A doesn't necessarily specify what it applies to.
No, and then C talks about the decks and other things that you're talking about, Steve, for the rear yards. I think you're fine leaving A the way it is.
Okay, let's move on. I'm good.
Okay.
But I don't know what the review and approval was for. Just add the verbiage.
No,
Nothing.
skip it. Yeah.
Okay. And then so my suggestion is going to be, because after we go through D here, I think we've call it an evening for tonight since it's 8:30, and the next section is going to be a lot more discussion. The parking and looking at that old parking matrix and how we want to try to implement that, I think is going to be at least another hour and a half. And I'm not sure anybody wants to be here that long this evening.
You want to do a work session?
I'm happy to do one.
I'm good with any day but March 16th because I'm out of town.
So it cannot be March 12th. That's the other thing I need to bring to everybody's attention. We are really pushing hard for March 12th to be Saturday, March 12th.
Rick, real quick, before you move on to that D, can we finish
Oh,
D real
Oh, I'm
quick?
sorry. Getting ahead of myself. I apologize.
Steve had some
So D
notations
is
on.
D is similar to A, right? In terms of the 25, actually, it does include the 25 to 50-foot lots as well.
I had it up and now it's gone.
So D allows for an outside stairway. Unenclosed above and below the steps may extend 4 feet into any yard, but not nearer than any side lot line than a distance of 4 feet. And so if we allow 4 feet on a side lot line, that's going to conflict with
25.
25 feet. And potentially the, what is it, 5 foot for the 25 and 50-foot lots?
Yeah, so that the 5 foot, so again, it's only going to be the 25-foot wide lot that it affects.
Well, that just means they have to put the stairs to the house in the center. Or, it's got to be at least 4 feet away from the side, so they can't put it on the side of the house. They've got to put it on the front.
Yeah, so the 25-foot wide lot's just not going to be able to do it. And I guess if that's what they want to do, they'll have to, that would be something they'd have to go to the Board of Appeals for. That would be one of those things that would be one of those 25-foot wide lots where they'd have to go to the Board of Appeals to say, this is why this is absolutely necessary for us to put these steps on the side of the house where there's not enough room. Or you can do like we did above, like you said, and say, except for 25-foot wide lots, which can extend 3 feet into any required yard, which is what their setback is 3 feet. But then you got the steps right on the lot line, but
I don't think you can build a 3-foot wide stair.
So where would they, why, if you're gonna put stairs, outside stairs to your lower living level, why would you put them on the side?
We've got some of
There's
those, we got
there's
some of those on Atlantic.
there's a few on Atlantic. There's one on your street too, Jen, I believe, where the people have an accessory unit above, or they used to, and the access to it is from steps on the side of the house.
Yeah, but they have a whole side yard.
Yeah, well, I know. I'm just saying, we have a few, but there's not
But
that.
that's a second story. I mean, if you're talking accessing the lower living level, that's your first floor. That's like the steps to my front
Okay.
door.
Not if
No.
you have a garage on the first floor.
Well, if you have a 25-foot lot and you've got a garage, where's your front door?
In the
Oh.
front.
It's up. That has to deal with the, you can't have the living space, below the flood zone.
Right, on Atlantic.
Right. So all I'm saying is that we've got that case up and down Atlantic. It doesn't hold on a lot of the other streets.
Yeah, so this is basically just steps in the landing, going into the house
Mm-hmm.
from the side.
Right.
We don't have a lot.
Well, if we don't have a lot, I'd say just keep it and let them go to Board of Appeals.
I mean, like I said, that's the option, is leave it and they can go to Board of Appeals if they need to do that. Or you could do like you did above and say, but not near to any side lot line at a distance of 4 feet, except for 25-foot wide lots, which are 3 feet.
Yeah, it's good to go ahead and restate the standoff on those small lots.
I
Okay,
mean, 36 inches is about the smallest landing and steps you can build. I don't think, I'm not exactly sure, but I think code minimum is 36 inches for
For
step,
stairway,
per
stairway width?
step landing, but I think your average is 48, but I think you can go to 36. I'm not positive. I'd have to look it up. So however you guys want to address that one, I'm good with.
I'm not sure what to say there.
I don't know. I think maybe Jen's right. I think the easiest thing is just go ahead and leave it as the 4 feet. And then if somebody has a 25-foot wide lot and they're, for whatever their reason is, they want to have their entrance on the side of the house, then they'll have to go to the Board of Appeals. I can't understand why that would be a necessity structurally, why they would have to have their entrance on the side of the home as opposed to the front. I mean, we've got some really big houses on 25-foot wide lots on Atlantic that all have 2-car garages and access to the front of their homes in the front.
Yeah, I agree with leaving it as is, as written, and having them appeal.
I'm good.
All right, sounds good. So then really the biggest changes coming next are how we address the parking. I will make sure I send out, it's attached to tonight's documents. I believe it was 2016 was the last time we had a parking matrix, for lack of a better term, or parking guidelines as far as how many spaces for specific uses and structures.
Right.
So everybody can look at that, and then we can work to get a date for a work session and tackle the rest of that through work session.
sounds good.
So the
Yep.
last thing I have is we are shooting for March 12th, that Saturday, to do a 2-hour open house for people to come in and discuss the comprehensive plan.
March what?
March 12th, 2 weeks.
Is it Saturday?
Yep. I believe it is, or maybe it's March 15th.
15th.
Yeah, I think it's the 15th. I'll send the date out specifically again tomorrow.
What are the times, Rick?
I believe they want to do 10 to 12. But I'll have those finalized through Linda tomorrow, the town administrator. And then I'll also send out. So this is really it's more informational so people understand what the process is. We've got a bunch of charts done up where they're going to be able to do basically a dot chart. It'll have a bunch of things on there, and whoever shows up can just put a dot under the things they think are important so we can quantify those things. I've done like a 22-page PowerPoint presentation that discusses what the comprehensive plan is. It goes over what each of the elements are, why they're important. I'll send that out for everybody to look at. Anybody that is available, obviously want as many people as we can. I really don't want to try pushing this thing back any farther. I'm really, really pressing to try and have this done by the middle of summer, July. I'd like to have what we put together and the recommendation to go to the council so they can start making their decisions as to whether we send this up to the state or not.
I'm out of town that weekend, so
Okay,
unfortunately I won't be there.
that's good. Going out of town's always nice.
I check on the mom.
I mean, if we have nobody that can make it, then we won't have a choice but to try to push it back. But I've got to start doing I've got to start planning for notifications and citizen notifications. So we're running out of time, but we've put together quite a bit of stuff, and I'll send that out to you all tomorrow. And if we'll get a hold of Jerome as well and see who can and can't make it.
Yep.
I may reach out to state planning and see if they have any assistance they can send as well. Like I said, I'd really rather get this done as opposed to having to wait any farther.
No, because we're gonna have, we'll have more permits coming, so we gotta get this done.
Yep. And that's all I have for the evening. I really appreciate everybody jumping in. Mr. Spriggs, again, very, very happy to have you on board
Glad to be here.
tonight. Yep.
Glad to be here.
Awesome.
Okay, then. Good night.
Somebody needs to make a motion to close.
Oh, shoot. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in
All in
favor?
favor?
Aye.
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 Thanks, everyone.
Good night.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Good night.